The galaxy had a rule. It was not written in any book. It was not carved in stone. But every space captain knew it. If humans ever said, "Stand back," you did not ask questions. You did not argue. You moved away as fast as possible. Because when humanity said those two words, something big was about to happen. Something dangerous. Something no one else was ready to face. In the center of the galaxy, inside the massive chamber of the Galactic Council, leaders from 100 worlds were in the middle of the meeting when the alarms began to scream. The sound was sharp and cold. Red lights flashed across the walls. A tall insect-like delegate turned its glowing eyes toward the main screen. "Report," it demanded. A nervous technician replied, "Human fleet detected near the Narration system. They have surrounded a dying star." The chamber became quiet. The Narration star was old and unstable. It had been marked as dead for years. No one went near it. It was too dangerous. A reptilian general leaned forward. "Why are humans near a dead star?" Another voice answered, slow and worried. "They sent a message." The screen changed. A simple human signal appeared across every channel. 2 words. "Stand back." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. The council leader, an ancient being of light, spoke carefully. "Did they explain?" "No," the technician said. "Only those words." A low whisper spread through the room. Some species looked confused. Others looked afraid. One older ambassador closed his eyes and said softly, "Level Omega." The words felt heavy. The council leader hesitated for only a second. Then it gave the order. "Activate Level Omega Threat Protocol." Across the galaxy, warning systems came alive. Military fleets changed course. Trade routes were shut down. Civilian ships were ordered to stay in safe zones. Level Omega was not used for invasion. It was not used for war. It was used when a single species could change the balance of the entire galaxy. And right now, that species was humanity. Far from the council chamber, near the burning light of the dying Narration star, the human flagship stood still in space. It was large but simple in design. No glowing weapons. No aggressive movement. Just silent power. Inside the command bridge, Admiral Elias Hayes stood with his hands behind his back. He looked calm, almost relaxed. The star in front of them was unstable. Its surface cracked with violent energy storms. "All fleets in position, sir," a young officer reported. "Evacuation warning has been sent to all nearby systems." Hayes nodded once. "Any response from the council?" "Yes, sir. They have declared Level Omega." A small smile appeared on Hayes's face. "Good. That means they are paying attention." The young officer swallowed. "Sir, with respect, if this fails, we could destroy 3 nearby systems." Hayes looked at the star again. His voice was steady. "It won't fail. And if it does," the officer asked quietly. Hayes turned to him. His eyes were calm but firm. "Then at least we tried." Outside the ship, massive human structures floated around the dying star. They were not warships. They were machines. Giant metal rings and energy towers connected by beams of light. They reached into the star's surface like careful hands. Deep inside the council chamber, panic began to rise. "Energy levels increasing," a technician shouted. "The humans are injecting something into the star." "A weapon?" someone asked. "No, it doesn't match any known weapon signature." The screen zoomed closer to the human machines. The star's surface began to pulse in a strange rhythm. Not random. Controlled. The reptilian general growled. "Are they trying to explode it?" Another species shook its head. "No, they are stabilizing it." Silence fell again. The council leader's light dimmed slightly. "That is impossible. That star is dead." Back on the human flagship, alarms sounded softly but steadily. "Core temperature rising," an engineer reported. "Containment fields holding at 70%. Hayes spoke clearly. "Begin Phase 1. Across the fleet, more machines activated. Bright beams of focused energy shot into the heart of the star. The surface cracked open, revealing a glowing core that had not burned in years. "Sir," the young officer whispered, "the star is responding." Hayes nodded. "Of course it is. It just needed a push." Suddenly, a massive wave of energy burst outward from the star. Alien ships watching from a distance were forced to retreat. Shock waves moved through space like invisible storms. Inside the council chamber, lights flickered. Energy spike detected. The star is going critical. Panic spread. Some leaders began shouting orders to prepare defenses. Others demanded communication with Earth. The council leader raised its voice. Contact the human admiral immediately. A transmission opened on the main screen. Admiral Hayes appeared. He looked tired but focused. "You are risking millions of lives," the council leader said. Hayes answered calmly. "We told you to stand back. Explain what you are doing." "We are fixing a problem," Hayes replied. "A problem you refuse to see." The chamber fell quiet again. "What problem?" the leader asked. Hayes paused for a second. Then he said, "Look beyond the star." The screen shifted. Long-range sensors zoomed past the Draction system into deep, dark space. At first, there was nothing. Then shapes appeared. Massive structures, moving slowly, heading toward the inner galaxy. Unknown vessels, a technician whispered. "No life signs." Hayes spoke softly. "They have been moving for decades. Silent, cold, destroying systems without warning." "Why do we not detect them?" someone asked. Hayes's eyes hardened. "Because you were not looking." The star behind his ship suddenly flared brighter than ever before. The light was no longer dying. It was growing. "What are you doing with the star?" the council leader demanded. Hayes looked back at the burning giant. "We are restarting it." Gasps filled the chamber. Restarting a dead star was impossible. It broke every known law of physics. But the light on the screen did not lie. The Draction star was burning stronger by the second. "Why?" the leader whispered. Hayes gave the final answer. "Because we were going to need the power." At that exact moment, the unknown vessels in deep space changed direction. They had detected the new star energy, and now they were coming faster. The council chamber fell into complete silence. Humanity had not tried to destroy the star. They had not tried to start a war. They had done something far more dangerous. They had changed the future of the galaxy, and they had only given one warning. Stand back. The Draction star was no longer dying. It was awake. Its light burned brighter than it had in thousands of years. Waves of energy rolled across its surface in perfect control. The human machines around it moved with slow purpose, adjusting fields and beams with exact timing. This was not chaos. This was design. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, no one spoke for several long seconds. Every eye was fixed on the screen. The unknown vessels in deep space had changed course. They were no longer drifting. They were accelerating, and they were heading straight toward the Draction system. "Magnify the image," the council leader ordered. The screen zoomed closer. The shapes became clearer. They were not smooth like organic ships. They were sharp, dark, and layered with heavy armor. No windows, no signals, no life signs. "They are machines," one scientist whispered, "but not like any we have built." A cold feeling spread across the chamber. "How many?" the reptilian general asked. The technician swallowed. "Hundreds, no, thousands." And more behind them. Back on the human flagship, Admiral Hayes stood silently as data streamed across the air in front of him. The young officer beside him looked pale. "Sir, the unknown fleet has locked onto the Draction star. They are increasing speed." Hayes nodded once. "They have noticed the light." "Sir, are we ready?" Hayes looked at the growing star. "We have one chance." Around the star, massive ring structures rotated into new positions. Energy lines connected them like a web. The star's core pulsed again, stronger this time. It was not unstable. It was controlled power. On Earth, deep inside a command center buried under mountains, leaders watched the same live feed. One advisor spoke quietly. "If this fails, we lose everything." The Earth president answered, "If we do nothing, we lose everything anyway." The screen shifted back to the Alien Council. "Human Admiral," the council leader said through open communication, "you restarted a dead star. That alone is beyond our understanding. Now explain these machines." Hayes did not hesitate. "We call them the Silent Harvesters." A low murmur spread. "They have been moving at the edge of the galaxy for over 50 years, Hayes continued. "They do not send messages. They do not trade. They do not speak. They enter a system, drain its star, and move on. Shock filled the chamber. Drain a star? Yes, Hayes replied. They leave behind cold worlds. Dead planets. Empty space. The insect-like delegate trembled. Why did you not warn us sooner? Hayes's voice grew harder. We tried. Your council said the signals were natural events. You said stars die every day. No one answered. Because it was true. Reports had been ignored. The Draxian star had not been chosen by accident. It was directly in the path of the silent harvesters. So you restarted the star to defend it? The council leader asked. Hayes nodded. Not just defend. Fight. At that moment, long-range sensors flashed red. Enemy fleet entering outer system, a human officer announced. The dark ships appeared on screen, moving in perfect formation. No fear. No hesitation. The silent harvesters spread out like a metal storm. From their centers, thin beams of black energy shot forward, scanning the Draxian star. They are analyzing it, the officer said. They have never faced resistance before, Hayes replied calmly. Prepare Phase 2. The human fleet moved into position. They were smaller compared to the machine vessels, but they did not retreat. Around the star, the giant rings began to glow brighter. Energy built between them, forming a shield of burning light. The first harvester ship fired. A beam of dark energy struck the outer ring. Space itself seemed to twist. The council chamber gasped as the human structure shook violently. Containment holding at 60%, a human engineer shouted. Hayes did not blink. Increased our output by 10%. Sir, that will stress the core. Do it. The Draxian star flared again, sending pure stellar energy into the ring network. The shield grew stronger, pushing back against the dark beam. For the first time, the harvester ships adjusted formation. They are reacting, the young officer said. Good, Hayes replied. That means they feel something. Suddenly, dozens of harvester ships fired at once. Black beams filled space. The shield trembled. One outer ring exploded into fragments. The shockwave slammed into nearby human ships. We lost Ring 3. Casualties reported. The bridge grew tense, but no one panicked. Hayes gave clear orders. Redirect power. Focus on the central array. The remaining rings shifted. Instead of only defending, they began to aim. The council watched in stunned silence. They are turning the star into a weapon, the reptilian general whispered. Hayes spoke into open channel. Council members, this is your last warning. Pull all fleets back beyond safe distance. You will destroy the entire system, one leader shouted. Hayes answered, not if we do it right. The harvester fleet moved closer. Their beams intensified. Human ships began firing back with plasma and rail cannons, but the machine armor was thick. The real weapon was still charging. Star output at maximum safe limit, the engineer reported. Safe limit is a suggestion, Hayes said quietly. Increase it. The young officer stared at him. Sir, Hayes looked at the incoming metal storm. Stand back. The words went across every open channel in the galaxy. Human ships suddenly pulled away from the immediate area of the star. The ring network locked into final position. The Draxian star reached a brightness never recorded before. Then it happened. A massive beam of pure stellar energy shot from the star itself, guided by the rings. It cut through space like a spear of light and struck the center of the harvester formation. For a second, everything went white. When the light faded, dozens of machine ships were gone. Not damaged. Gone. Vaporized. The rest of the harvester fleet paused. For the first time, their perfect formation broke. Direct hit confirmed, a human officer said in shock. In the council chamber, no one breathed. Humanity had just used a star as a cannon. But the victory was not complete. More harvester ships were still coming from deep space. And they were adapting. On the human bridge, new warning lights appeared. Sir, the engineer said slowly, the enemy is changing frequency. They're learning how to absorb the star energy. Hayes watched the distant machines regroup. His face remained calm, but his eyes were serious. Of course they are, he said. They always do. The young officer whispered, what now? Hayes looked at the burning Draxian star. Now, he said quietly. We show them why the galaxy fears level Omega. Outside, the Harvester fleet began charging a weapon far larger than before. The war had truly begun. The Harvester fleet did not retreat. After the first blast from the Draxian star, they pulled back only for a moment. Then their formation changed. The dark ships spread into wider circles, moving with cold precision. They were not afraid. They were calculating. On the bridge of the human flagship, warning lights glowed across every panel. Enemy energy levels rising. An officer reported. They are adjusting their shields. Admiral Hayes stood still, watching the display. The image of the Draxian star burned bright behind the enemy fleet. They are learning, the young officer said quietly. Hayes nodded. That is what makes them dangerous. In deep space, the Harvester ships began to glow faintly along their edges. Thin lines of dark light connected them, forming a web between their vessels. What are they doing? Someone asked. The answer came seconds later. The next wave of star energy fired from the human ring network and struck the enemy formation. But this time, the result was different. Instead of exploding, the dark ships absorbed part of the blast. The web of energy between them flashed, spreading the power across the fleet. Impact reduced by 40%, the engineer shouted. They are adapting to the frequency. Hayes did not show surprise. He had expected this. Begin frequency rotation, he ordered. Around the Draxian star, the massive rings shifted slightly. The beam fired again, but this time its color changed. The energy pattern was different. It hit the enemy fleet at a new angle. Several Harvester ships shattered instantly, unable to adjust fast enough. But others survived. They were learning with every strike. In the Galactic Council chamber, the leaders watched in growing fear. They're absorbing the power of a star, one scientist whispered. No species should be able to do that. The council leader's light flickered softly. And yet they are. A transmission opened again from Admiral Hayes. Council, you need to understand something, he said calmly. This is not a normal enemy. They do not fear death. They do not negotiate. They only expand. How many systems have they destroyed? The insect-like delegate asked. Hayes hesitated for a brief second. 17 confirmed. Possibly more. Shock filled the chamber. Entire star systems erased without the galaxy even knowing. Why were we blind? The reptilian general demanded. Hayes answered without anger. Because they leave nothing behind. No survivors. No signals. Just cold space. Back near the Draxian star, the Harvester fleet made its next move. Instead of attacking the rings again, several ships broke away and moved toward the outer planets of the system. Sir, they are targeting the gas giants, the young officer reported. Hayes's eyes narrowed. They need raw materials. They are preparing something bigger. The human fleet split into groups to intercept. Space battles erupted between smaller ships. Human destroyers fired plasma bursts and missile volleys. The Harvester vessels returned fire with cutting beams that sliced through armor like paper. Explosions lit up the darkness. One human cruiser broke apart under heavy fire. Escape pods launched before it vanished in flame. Casualties increasing, the engineer said softly. Hayes watched every loss without changing expression. Hold the line, he ordered. At the center of the battlefield, the main Harvester fleet began forming a single massive structure. Ships locked together, piece by piece, building something enormous. That is not a defense, the young officer whispered. It is a weapon. The structure grew larger than any single ship. A dark sphere formed at its core, pulling in energy from nearby space. Even light seemed to bend around it. Energy spike detected, the engineer warned. They're creating a gravity well. In the council chamber, panic spread again. If they collapse the star, one delegate began. The entire region will be destroyed, another finished. Hayes opened a direct channel to all human ships. His voice was steady and clear. All fleets, pull back to safe radius. Activate secondary arrays. Around the Draxian star, hidden platforms powered up. Smaller than the main rings, they have been silent until now. Sir, those were not in the original plan, the young officer said. Hayes gave a small smile. We never show the full plan. The secondary arrays began emitting focused pulses, striking the growing harvester weapon from multiple angles. The dark sphere flickered, but did not collapse. Instead, it grew denser. "They are feeding on the star's gravity," the engineer said. "They're trying to turn our weapon against us." Hayes looked at the burning star. "Then we changed the rules." "Sir, increase stellar rotation," Hayes commanded. "Shift magnetic alignment." The rings adjusted once more. The Draxian star's surface twisted violently as its magnetic fields were forced into a new pattern. Solar flares erupted outward in massive arcs. The battlefield turned into chaos. Several harvester ships were caught in the sudden storm and torn apart. The giant dark sphere trembled as unstable forces pushed against it. "Their structure is destabilizing," an officer shouted. For a brief moment, it seemed like humanity would win again. Then the harvester core pulsed. A deep wave of dark energy exploded outward, smashing through human defenses. One of the secondary arrays was destroyed instantly. The shockwave hit the main ring network. Containment failing. Ring 5 critical. On the bridge, sparks flew as systems overloaded. The young officer grabbed the railing to stay upright. "Sir, if the rings collapse, the star will go supernova." Hayes knew that. Everyone knew that. The harvester fleet was forcing them into a deadly choice. Use too much power and destroy the system. Use too little and lose the war. In the council chamber, silence returned. They were watching the edge of extinction. Humanity had woken a star to fight. Now that same star could become a bomb. Hayes closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, his decision was made. "Prepare Phase 3, he said quietly. The young officer stared at him in shock. "Sir, that protocol was never tested." Hayes looked at the burning Draxian star, then at the dark machine fleet. Neither was restarting a dead sun. Outside, the harvester core began charging for a final strike. Space itself trembled as gravity bent around it. Human ships moved into new positions, forming a tight, defensive wall around the star. The council leader's voice came through one last time. "Humanity, what are you about to do?" Hayes answered with calm certainty. "Something they cannot adapt to." The Draxian star flared brighter than ever before. And this time, the light did not look natural. It looked controlled, directed, focused with purpose. The battlefield froze for a single breath. Then the star changed color. The Draxian star changed color. Its bright yellow light slowly shifted into a deep blue-white glow. The energy around it no longer looked wild. It looked sharp, focused, controlled with extreme precision. Even the harvester fleet paused for a second, as if their machines were trying to understand what they were seeing. On the human flagship, every screen was filled with new data. "Magnetic inversion complete," the chief engineer reported. "Core rotation stable at increased velocity." The young officer stared at the star in disbelief. "Sir, we have never forced a star into a blue state artificially." Admiral Hayes kept his eyes on the display. "Today we do." Outside, massive arcs of blue plasma stretched across space like glowing rivers. The ring network around the star rotated faster, locking into a new alignment. The energy pattern was no longer simple stellar output. It was something refined, something shaped. In the Galactic Council chamber, silence held the room again. "Explain what we are witnessing," the council leader demanded. A human science advisor appeared beside Admiral Hayes on the transmission. "The Draxian star has entered a compressed fusion state," she said in calm, simple words. "We are forcing the core to burn hotter, but in a smaller area." The reptilian general leaned forward. "Why?" Hayes answered. "Because raw power is not enough. We need precision." As he spoke, the harvester core weapon fired. A massive wave of dark gravity energy rushed toward the star. Space twisted around it. Smaller human ships were thrown off course as the wave passed. The council gasped, expecting the star to collapse under the pressure. But instead, the blue-white star pulsed once. Then it released a narrow beam of focused energy directly into the center of the incoming wave. The two forces collided. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the dark gravity wave shattered into fragments of fading energy. Direct counter achieved. The engineer reported in shock. The Harvester fleet shifted formation again. Their massive combined structure separated into 3 parts, each forming its own dark sphere. They are splitting their core, the young officer said. Hayes nodded. They are increasing survival probability. Can we counter 3? The officer asked. Hayes did not answer immediately. He looked at the star, calculating. We do not counter, he said finally. We overwhelm. He gave a new command. Activate Stellar Net. Hidden deep within the system, beyond the view of the Council, small satellites powered on. They had been placed months ago in secret positions. One by one, they formed a wide circle around the battlefield. Blue energy lines connected them, creating a massive web across space. The Harvester ships detected it instantly. Several broke away to attack the satellites. Human fighters intercepted them in fierce close combat. Explosions flashed like distant lightning. On the bridge, tension filled the air. Satellite 7 destroyed. Satellite 9 under heavy fire. Hayes remained steady. Hold them long enough. Back in the council chamber, confusion spread. What is the Stellar Net? One delegate asked. The human advisor explained. It is a focusing grid. It allows the star's energy to be split into multiple streams without losing strength. The council leader's light dimmed slightly. You are turning an entire system into a weapon. Hayes answered without pride. Yes. The 3 Harvester cores began charging again. This time, each one aimed at a different part of the human defense network. If even one broke through, the ring system would collapse. Energy spike detected from all 3 cores, the engineer warned. Impact in 20 seconds. Hayes spoke clearly. All fleets fall back behind the Stellar Net boundary. Human ships pulled away at maximum speed. Some were too damaged to move quickly. Rescue craft rushed to assist them. The young officer watched the countdown. 10 seconds. The Harvester cores fired together. 3 massive waves of dark energy raced forward. At the same moment, the Draxian star released 3 narrow beams of pure blue-white light, guided through the Stellar Net. Each beam met a dark wave head-on. The collision was brighter than anything seen before. One dark core shattered instantly. The second cracked and broke apart seconds later. The third held for a moment longer, resisting with violent force. Increase output by 5%. Hayes ordered. Sir, that pushes the star beyond safe limits, the engineer shouted. Hayes's voice was firm. Do it. The star roared with blinding intensity. The third dark core finally broke, exploding into fragments of dead metal. Across space, dozens of Harvester ships were caught in the blast and destroyed. The remaining enemy vessels scattered, their perfect formation lost. On the council screen, disbelief filled every face. Humanity had just defeated a force that had erased entire systems. But the victory was not complete. Long-range sensors began flashing again. Additional Harvester signatures detected. A technician in the council chamber said in fear. More are coming from deep space. Hay saw the same data on his display. Hundreds more contacts. Then thousands. The young officer whispered, They sent a signal before we destroyed their cores. Hayes nodded slowly. This was only the front line. The Draxian star still burned in its unnatural blue state. But warning signs were increasing. Core stress at critical levels, the engineer reported. If we maintain this output much longer, the star will become unstable. Hayes understood the cost. They could win this battle and still lose the system. On the council channel, the leader spoke quietly. Humanity, how long can you hold this? Hayes looked at the incoming wave of dark ships. He answered honestly, not long. For the first time, fear touched his voice. Not fear of defeat, but fear of time. The Harvester reinforcements were larger than anything before. They were not simple ships. Massive carrier structures moved at the center of the new fleet. Each one was bigger than a moon. The council chamber fell into deep silence. This was not an invasion. This was an extermination force. On the human bridge, officers worked without pause. Some were injured. Some were exhausted. But no one stepped away. Hayes turned to his crew. Phase 4 preparation, he said. The young officer looked at him carefully. Sir, Phase 4 requires authorization from Earth. Hayes opened a secure channel. The president's image appeared. No long speech. No debate. Just one question. Will it save the galaxy? Hayes answered simply, yes. The president nodded once. Authorization granted. Hayes closed the channel and faced the growing darkness ahead. Outside, the massive harvester carriers began to open. Inside them, thousands of smaller ships prepared to launch. The blue-white Draxian star flickered under stress, barely holding its force state. The council leader's final question echoed across the channel. What is phase for? Hayes took a slow breath. Then he answered, we stopped defending. He looked at the burning star, then at the endless machine fleet. Now, he said quietly, we go hunting. The Draxian system was no longer just a battlefield. It had become a line. On one side stood humanity and the burning blue-white star they had forced back to life. On the other side, an ocean of dark metal ships moved forward without fear. The harvester carriers opened like giant mouths in space. From inside them, thousands of smaller ships poured out in perfect order. They did not rush. They did not panic. They advanced like a slow storm that knew it would win. On the human flagship, Admiral Hayes watched the tactical display fill with red markers. The young officer beside him swallowed hard. Enemy numbers increasing every second, he reported. They outnumber us 10-1. Hayes nodded calmly. Numbers are not everything. Sir, the engineer added, the star cannot hold this output much longer. Core pressure is rising fast. The blue-white Draxian star flickered again, its surface twisting under forced fusion. If it collapsed now, the entire system would be destroyed. Humanity would stop the harvesters, but at the cost of billions of lives across nearby systems. Hayes knew that. That was why Phase 4 existed. All fleets, Hayes said across open channel, begin Operation Spearpoint. Human ships suddenly changed formation. Instead of guarding the ring network closely, they moved outward, forming sharp attack lines aimed directly at the incoming harvester carriers. In the Galactic Council chamber, confusion spread again. They're leaving their defensive position, one delegate said. Have they lost control? The council leader watched carefully. No, this is deliberate. Back in the Draxian system, the first wave of harvester fighters reached engagement range. Dark beams fired in organized bursts. Human ships answered with plasma cannons and missile swarms. Space filled with explosions. But this time, humanity was not simply reacting. 3 human battlecruisers moved ahead of the main fleet. Their hulls glowed faintly as hidden systems activated. Spearpoint vessels in position, the young officer reported. Hayes gave a single command. Fire. The battlecruisers released something new. Not a beam, not a missile. A long, bright lance of compressed stellar energy shot forward, thinner than the previous star beams, but far more concentrated. It pierced straight through the armor of a harvester carrier. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the massive structure split in half, its internal systems exploding in a chain reaction. Shock rippled through the enemy fleet. Direct carrier kill confirmed, the engineer shouted. The council chamber erupted in disbelief. They are striking the command vessels, the reptilian general said. The harvester fleet adjusted instantly. Several carriers shifted position to shield the damaged area. Smaller ships moved to intercept the spearpoint vessels. But humanity was already moving again. Target next carrier, Hayes ordered. The battlecruisers fired a second time. Another bright lance cut across space, tearing into the enemy formation. This time the carrier's shields absorbed part of the blast, but deep damage was visible. The harvesters answered with overwhelming force. Dark energy beams converged on one of the human battlecruisers. Its shields collapsed under the pressure. The ship exploded in a burst of white light. Silence filled the human bridge for half a second. Then operations continued. No shouting, no panic. Hayes's voice remained steady. Adjust firing angle. Rotate frequency. The remaining 2 spearpoint vessels changed their energy pattern. They fired again, this time striking the same damaged carrier. The structure finally broke apart, debris scattering across space. But the cost was high. Human fighters were being destroyed in large numbers. Rescue signals filled the background channels. In the council chamber, fear returned. Even with this new weapon, they cannot win against such numbers, one delegate whispered. The council leader remained quiet, watching Admiral Hayes carefully. Hayes looked at the tactical display and then at the Draction star. "Prepare final release," he said softly. The young officer froze. "Sir, that will remove all containment." Hayes nodded. "Yes." Outside, the ring network around the star began to unlock. The controlled beams that had been carefully shaped now started merging into one growing sphere of light around the star itself. The blue-white glow expanded outward, pushing against space like a rising tide. The Harvester fleet detected the change. Their formation tightened defensively around the remaining carriers. They began charging a unified attack, gathering all available energy into a single massive dark sphere at the center of their fleet. "They are preparing a system-level strike," the engineer warned. Hay spoke calmly into the open channel. "All human vessels, retreat to outer boundary immediately." Some ships hesitated. "That is an order," Hayes added. One by one, human ships pulled back at maximum speed. The Spearpoint battlecruisers retreated as well, leaving the burning star alone at the center of the battlefield. In the council chamber, voices rose in panic. "If the star explodes, it will not explode," Hayes interrupted over the channel. "It will be redirected." The young officer looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, redirect where?" Hayes did not look away from a screen. At them. The Harvester fleet fired first. A massive dark wave surged forward, larger than anything before. It was designed to crush the star's core and collapse it inward. But at that exact moment, Hayes gave the final command. "Release." The ring network fully disengaged. The compressed fusion state of the Draction star burst outward, not as a wild explosion, but as a controlled expanding wave of pure stellar force. The blue-white energy met the dark wave head-on. For a second, the two forces locked together in silence. Then the human wave pushed through. The expanding star energy slammed into the front line of Harvester ships, vaporizing them instantly. It continued forward, tearing into the carrier fleet. One massive structure after another shattered under the pressure. The battlefield became a storm of burning debris and fading metal. Even the council chamber screens flickered under the intense radiation. When the light finally began to fade, half of the Harvester fleet was gone. The remaining ships were scattered and damaged, but they were not destroyed. Deep within the surviving enemy formation, a new signal pulsed. Stronger than before. Smarter. On the human flagship, warning alarms returned. "Unknown energy signature detected," the engineer said. "It is not from any carrier." Hayes stared at the new contact appearing on screen. It was larger than the others. Darker. Moving from the rear of the Harvester formation. The young officer whispered, "What is that?" Hayes answered quietly, "Their true command." The massive shape moved forward slowly, its surface covered in shifting armor plates. As it approached, every damaged Harvester ship began repositioning around it protectively. In the council chamber, silence returned once more. They understood now. This war was not over. Humanity had struck hard, harder than any species in history. But the Harvesters had finally revealed their core intelligence, and it was awake. The massive shape moved forward from the darkness like a shadow that swallowed stars. It was larger than the carriers humanity had already destroyed. Its surface was not smooth metal. It shifted and moved as if the ship itself was alive. Broken Harvester vessels gathered around it, forming a defensive wall. The battlefield grew quiet for a brief moment, as if both sides understood that something had changed. On the human flagship, no one spoke. The main screen zoomed in on a new structure. "Size estimate?" Admiral Hayes asked. "Larger than our biggest moon," the engineer replied. "Energy readings are different, not just mechanical." The young officer stared at the image. "Is that their leader?" Hayes nodded slowly. "Yes, this is what has been directing them." In the Galactic Council chamber, fear spread like cold air. "We thought the carriers were their command units," one delegate said. "We were wrong. The council leader answered quietly. The massive Harvester Core ship began to emit a low pulse of dark energy. The signal spread across the battlefield. Damaged Harvester ships that had been drifting without order suddenly stabilized. Their movements became sharp and organized again. They are reconnecting to a central mind, the human science advisor explained through the open channel. Hayes understood the danger. When the Harvesters acted alone, they were strong. When they acted together under one intelligence, they were unstoppable. All fleets hold position at outer boundary, Hayes ordered. Do not engage yet. The young officer looked at him in surprise. Sir, if we wait, they will rebuild formation. Hayes's eyes stayed on the massive enemy ship. I know. The Harvester Core ship moved closer to the Draction star. It did not fire. It did not rush. It simply observed. Long beams of scanning energy passed over the star and the human fleet. It is studying us, the engineer said, learning from every move. In a council chamber, one ambassador spoke in a shaking voice. Can it be destroyed like the others? Hayes answered honestly. Not with what we have left. The Draction star flickered again. After the massive energy release, its forced blue-white state was unstable. Core stress at 92%, the engineer warned. If we attempt another full discharge, the star will collapse. Hayes knew the truth. They had used their strongest attack already. The Harvesters had lost much of their fleet, but their true mind had arrived, and it looked untouched. Suddenly, the massive core ship did something unexpected. A narrow beam of dark light shot toward one of the drifting Harvester wrecks. The destroyed vessel began to glow faintly. Pieces of metal lifted and reassembled. Systems reignited. It is repairing them, the young officer whispered. One by one, damaged Harvester ships were pulled toward the core vessel. They were not just being fixed. They were being upgraded. Their armor shifted into thicker layers. Their energy signatures changed frequency. It is improving them using battle data, the engineer said. Every weapon we used, it has recorded it. Hayes took a slow breath. Then we stopped playing its game. He turned toward the communication station. Open wide channel to the Harvester Core. The bridge crew exchanged nervous looks. Sir, it does not respond to communication. Hayes's voice was calm. Open it anyway. A broad transmission signal spread across space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the dark core ship responded. Not with words, but with a signal pattern. The human systems translated it into simple meaning. Threat identified. Adaptation complete. Elimination in progress. The message was cold, direct, without emotion. Hayes nodded slightly. At least it talks. In the council chamber, silence fell again. It sees humanity as the primary threat, the council leader said. Good, Hayes replied. That was the plan. The young officer looked confused. Sir, Hayes explained in simple words. Before today, it saw the galaxy as resources. Now it sees us as danger. That changes its behavior. As if to confirm his words, the Harvester Core ship shifted position. Instead of advancing toward nearby civilian systems, it moved directly toward the human fleet. All remaining enemy vessels followed. They are focusing entirely on us, the engineer confirmed. In the council chamber, shock turned into understanding. Humanity had drawn the enemy's full attention, but the cost would be high. The Harvester Core began charging a weapon unlike the others. Dark energy gathered around it in layered rings. Space around the structure bent inward. Energy levels exceeding previous maximum, the engineer warned. If that fires at the star, Hayes finished the sentence. The system dies. Human ships tightened formation. They were heavily damaged. Many weapons were offline, but no one retreated further. The young officer spoke quietly. Sir, do we have any option left? Hayes looked at the Draction star, then back at the approaching dark giant. Yes, he said, but you're not going to like it. On Earth, emergency channels reopened. The president's image appeared once more. Report, she said. Hayes answered directly. The enemy command unit has entered the battlefield. It is stronger than expected. Standard weapons will not stop it. Your recommendation? She asked. Hayes paused for 1 second. We shut down the star. Silence filled the Earth command room. If we shut down the star, we lose our main weapon, one advisor said. Hayes nodded. Yes, but we also remove the energy source it is studying and adapting to. Back in the Draction system, the Harvester core ship continued charging its massive weapon. The energy sphere around it grew darker and denser. Human ships prepared for impact. The president looked at Hayes through the secure channel. If you shut down the star, can we still win? Hayes answered honestly. I do not know. The president held his gaze. Then she gave a single nod. Do it. The channel closed. On the human flagship, Hayes gave the final order. Begin star dampening sequence. Around the Draction star, the remaining ring structures changed alignment once more. Instead of forcing fusion higher, they began pulling energy away, cooling the unstable core. The blue-white glow slowly started to fade. In the council chamber, confusion returned. What are they doing? One delegate asked. The council leader watched carefully. They're taking away their own advantage. The Harvester core ship reacted instantly. Its charging process accelerated. It sensed the change. It understood something was shifting. On the human bridge, tension reached its peak. Core temperature dropping, the engineer reported. Dampening at 40%. Hayes stared at the massive enemy vessel moving closer. 50%. The star dimmed further, returning slowly toward its natural unstable state. 60%. The Harvester core weapon reached full charge. Dark energy pulsed violently around it. Sir, incoming attack in 5 seconds, the young officer shouted. Hayes did not move. Hold steady. The Draction star's light dropped sharply as the dampening field intensified. The battlefield fell into strange darkness. And in that darkness, the Harvester core fired. The Harvester core fired. A massive wave of dark energy tore across space, aimed directly at the fading Draction star. The attack was larger than anything before. It bent light. It crushed debris into dust as it passed. On the human flagship, alarm screamed. Impact in 3 seconds, the engineer shouted. Admiral Hayes did not blink. Dampening at 80%? Yes, sir. The blue-white glow of the Draction star had almost vanished. It now looked weak, unstable, close to dying again. To the harvesters, it must have seemed like victory. The dark wave struck the star. Space shook. A silent explosion of twisted gravity wrapped around the system. In the Galactic Council chamber, several delegates covered their faces, expecting total destruction. But the star did not explode. It did not collapse. The dark energy wrapped around it, searching for intense fusion to crush. There was none. The dampening field had drained the force power just in time. Star holding, the engineer cried in disbelief. The Harvester core ship paused. Its weapon had been designed to overload active stellar fusion. Instead, it had hit a cooling, unstable sun. The attack passed through the outer layers and faded into empty space. Hayes exhaled slowly. Now, the young officer looked at him. Sir, Hayes's voice was firm. Phase 4, second stage. Wake it up. Around the Draction star, hidden inside the ring structures, a new system activated. It was not designed to increase fusion. It was designed to redirect it inward. Instead of burning outward like a normal star, the energy began collapsing toward a single controlled point deep inside the core. Internal compression starting, the engineer reported. But sir, if we compress too much, we won't let it collapse, Hayes said calmly. We guide it. The Harvester core ship reacted. Its surface shifted rapidly. It began charging again, faster this time. It understood that humanity had avoided destruction. Now it would not make the same mistake. Smaller Harvester ships rushed forward, trying to destroy the remaining ring structures before the new process completed. Human fleets moved to intercept. Even with damaged hulls and low ammunition, they formed a defensive wall. Space filled again with fire and debris. In the council chamber, shock turned into cautious hope. They survived the primary strike, one ambassador whispered. The council leader watched Admiral Hayes closely. But at what cost? Back in the Draction system, the star's light dimmed even further. To outside sensors, it now looked close to total failure. But inside its core, pressure was rising in a controlled spiral. The engineer's hands moved quickly across her console, core density increasing, energy focus at 90% alignment. Hayes nodded. Prepare release vector. The young officer stared at the tactical screen. Sir, you're not firing outward, are you? Hayes shook his head. No, we are not attacking the fleet. The officer's eyes widened as he understood. The Harvester core ship began moving closer to the star itself. It wanted to ensure total destruction. It did not realize it was moving exactly where humanity needed it. Enemy command unit entering inner system radius, the engineer said. Perfect, Hayes replied softly. The Harvester core charged its weapon once more, this time at close range. Dark rings of energy spun around it. Human ships tried desperately to slow it down, but many were destroyed in the attempt. In the council chamber, tension reached its highest point. If that thing fires again at this distance, the star will not survive, the reptilian general said. Hayes spoke quietly into the open channel. All fleets retreat immediately. Minimum safe radius. Sir? The young officer asked in shock. That will leave the star undefended. Hayes gave him a steady look. Trust the plan. One by one, surviving human ships pulled away at full speed. The battlefield cleared, leaving only the dim star and the massive Harvester core ship facing each other. The enemy vessel completed its charge. Dark energy built to maximum output. It fired. The blast struck the surface of the Draction star at close range. This time, something different happened. Instead of passing through or exploding outward, the dark energy was pulled inward. The compressed core inside the star absorbed it like fuel. Internal compression exceeding safe limit, the engineer warned. Hayes's eyes remained fixed on the screen. Stabilize and redirect. Now, deep within the star, the compressed fusion point reached critical focus. The added dark energy from the Harvester attack fed directly into it. For one brief second, everything went silent across the system. Then the star released a single, ultra-focused beam, not outward in all directions, but straight ahead. The beam was thin, brighter than anything seen before, and faster than the eye could follow. It pierced directly through the center of the Harvester core ship. There was no explosion at first, just a clean line of white-blue light cutting through dark metal. Then the massive structure froze. Its surface stopped shifting. The energy rings around it collapsed inward. A chain reaction began deep inside its systems. The Harvester fleet around it suddenly lost coordination. Ships drifted. Some collided. Others powered down completely. On the human flagship, silence filled the bridge. Direct core penetration confirmed, the engineer said slowly. Enemy command signal fading. The massive Harvester core ship began to break apart from the inside. Cracks of light spread across its surface. Then it shattered in a silent storm of debris. In the council chamber, no one moved. The central intelligence of the Harvesters, the mind that had guided the destruction of 17 systems, was gone. Across the battlefield, remaining Harvester ships drifted without order. Some attempted to flee. Others simply powered down. The organized threat had collapsed. On the human bridge, the young officer whispered, "Did we win?" Hayes watched the fading wreckage. "We destroyed their command," he said quietly. "But we do not know how many more exist." The Draction star flickered weakly behind the drifting debris. Its core had survived, but barely. Star stability at 40%, the engineer reported. "It will not hold much longer." Hayes nodded slowly. "Then our work here is done." In the council chamber, the leader finally spoke. "Humanity has changed the balance of the galaxy." Hayes answered calmly through the open channel. "No, we just reminded it." As the last fragments of the Harvester core ship burned away, a faint signal pulsed from deep space, far beyond the battlefield. It was weak, distant, but it was real, and it was not alone. The battlefield around the Draction star was filled with silence and drifting metal. Broken Harvester ships floated without direction. Some were completely dark. Others flickered with weak power, as if unsure what to do without their command. The massive core ship that had led them was gone. Only fragments remained, slowly cooling in space. On the human flagship, the crew watched the tactical display carefully. Enemy coordination at 0, the engineer reported. No unified signals detected. The young officer let out a long breath. So, it is over? Admiral Hayes did not answer immediately. He was looking at a different screen, one that showed deep space beyond the battlefield. No, he said quietly. It is not over. In the Galactic Council chamber, many delegates were already celebrating. Some spoke loudly about victory. Others praised humanity's courage. But the council leader remained silent. Its light flickered softly as it studied new data arriving from long-range sensors. Report, the leader commanded. A technician swallowed nervously. We are detecting faint signals from beyond the outer rim, similar to the Harvester command frequency. The chamber became quiet again. Back in the Narration system, Hayes opened a secure channel to Earth. The president appeared, her face serious. Status? She asked. Primary enemy command destroyed, Hayes replied. Remaining units inactive or retreating. But, she asked, sensing his tone. Hayes nodded slightly. But we are detecting additional command-level signals far beyond this system. On the main screen, a new image appeared. It showed distant points of dark energy blinking slowly in the void. Not one, not two, many. The young officer stared in disbelief. How many? The engineer adjusted the sensors. We cannot confirm exact numbers, but it could be dozens, maybe more. In the council chamber, fear replaced celebration. You're saying there are more of these core intelligences? The reptilian general asked. Hayes answered through the open channel. Yes, the one we destroyed was only a forward unit. Silence filled the chamber. The scale of the threat was larger than anyone had imagined. The Harvesters were not a single fleet. They were a network, a species of machines spread across deep space, each with its own command mind. The Narration star flickered again, weak and unstable after the massive compression attack. Core stability dropping, the engineer warned. If we do not fully release dampening control, the star will collapse naturally within hours. Hayes nodded. Begin controlled normalization. Return it to natural fusion state. The remaining ring structures adjusted one last time. Slowly, the Narration star's color shifted back toward its original yellow glow. It was weaker than before, but alive. Humanity had saved it from death and from destruction. On Earth, military leaders studied the deep space signals. One advisor spoke quietly. If there are dozens of Harvester cores, we cannot fight them one by one like this. The president looked at Hayes. Options? Hayes answered honestly. We need to change strategy. We cannot wait for them to enter our space. The young officer turned toward him. Sir, you mean go beyond our territory? Hayes nodded. Yes, we go to them. In the council chamber, shock returned. You would take this war into deep space? One ambassador asked. Hayes met their gaze through the screen. If we do not, they will come back stronger. They will adapt to everything we did here. The council leader's light dimmed thoughtfully. What are you proposing, Admiral? Hayes brought up a hidden file. The words at the top were clear. Level Omega Expansion Protocol. Murmurs spread across the chamber. Level Omega had already been declared during the battle, but now humanity was preparing to go further. Level Omega does not only mean defense. Hayes explained in simple words. It means species-level action, full mobilization, no limits. The reptilian general narrowed his eyes. No limits. Hayes nodded. We will use every resource, every star network, every experimental drive. We will build fleets designed for deep void travel. The council leader spoke slowly. That will change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Hayes did not deny it. Yes, on the human flagship, the crew worked to stabilize the system. Rescue ships collected survivors. Damaged vessels were towed away from debris fields. The battlefield was slowly turning quiet. But far beyond sensor range, the faint Harvester signals continued pulsing. They were not retreating. They were communicating, sharing data about humanity. Learning. Sir, the engineer said softly. Intercepted fragments suggest the remaining cores are adjusting their strategy. Hayes gave a small, cold smile. Good. So are we. On Earth, construction orders were already being sent. Shipyards began activating long-dormant projects. Experimental engines that could bend space more efficiently were moved from research to production. Humanity was not preparing for another battle. They were preparing for a campaign. In the council chamber, a final question was asked. Admiral Hayes, the council leader, said, "Why risk so much? Why not build stronger defenses and wait?" Hayes looked tired, but his voice was steady. Because defense only delays extinction. We saw what they did to 17 systems. Next time, it could be yours. The chamber fell silent. They understood now. Humanity was not fighting for glory. They were fighting for survival of everyone. Back near the Draction star, the last pieces of the destroyed Harvester core drifted into the star's gravity and burned away. It was a small symbol of victory, but it was not the end. The young officer looked at Hayes one more time. "Sir, do you think the galaxy will support us?" Hayes watched the distant stars beyond the system. They do not have a choice. Far out in deep space, one of the distant Harvester core's signals grew stronger. It had received the final data burst from the destroyed unit. Its surface began to shift, adapting even before meeting humanity directly. A new course was plotted, straight toward the inner galaxy. The war had only entered its second phase, and this time, humanity would not wait behind their borders. The distant Harvester core signals pulsed steadily in the dark void. Far beyond the Draction system, the massive units had gathered intelligence from the destroyed forward core. Each one had recorded humanity's tactics, every energy pulse, every strategic maneuver. They adapted silently, calculating. No sound escaped into space, but the signals were unmistakable. They were converging. On the human flagship, Admiral Hayes studied the data flowing in from deep space sensors. "They are regrouping," he said quietly. The young officer swallowed. "Sir, how many are we talking about this time?" Hayes adjusted the display. Dots representing dark energy cores blinked on the screen. "Too many to fight conventionally." The engineer leaned forward. "They have combined their adaptive algorithms. They're learning faster than we can predict." Hayes didn't flinch. "Good. That means we have an edge, the element of surprise." Across the Draction system, human fleets began repair and resupply operations. Ships that had survived the initial battle were reinforced with new plasma arrays and modified energy shields. Engineers worked tirelessly to integrate experimental drives capable of bending space for rapid deployment. The young officer watched the activity nervously. "Sir, are we going after them?" Hayes nodded. "Yes. The best defense is to strike first at the heart of their network." In the Galactic Council chamber, leaders debated. "We should warn other systems," a delegate said. "Humanity is planning an offensive far beyond their territory." The council leader's light dimmed thoughtfully. They are not attacking for conquest. They are attacking for survival. Hayes opened a direct communication line to the council. "We will not harm your systems," he said. "Our target is the Harvester cores. We strike deep where no civilization has been affected. This is for the survival of everyone." Back on Earth, shipyards worked around the clock. Massive dreadnoughts and carrier fleets were outfitted with the latest experimental weapons. Engineers completed the modifications to hyperdrive systems, allowing vessels to jump vast distances almost instantaneously. On the flagship, Hayes gathered his senior officers. "We have one chance," he said. "The Harvesters are smarter now. They adapt quickly. We cannot fight them in open space like before. We need precision, speed, and deception." The young officer nodded. "What's the plan, sir?" Hayes traced a path across the star map. "We will use our experimental drives to infiltrate the core sector undetected. Our fleet will split into 3 task groups. One group engages decoy signals to distract the outer units. One group targets the defensive satellites of the core units. The final group strikes directly at the central core." The engineer frowned. "That is high risk, sir." "If the central core detects us too early," Hayes interrupted firmly, "then we are dead. But if we succeed, we cripple their network in one coordinated strike." The council observed silently. Even for them, It was a gamble no species had ever attempted. Weeks passed as the human fleets prepared. Every officer drilled endlessly. Every ship was loaded with supplies and weapons. Drones tested coordination with a larger fleet. Simulations ran repeatedly, recalculating for every possible harvester adaptation. Hayes walked along the flagship's command deck, watching the crews. He stopped in front of the young officer. "Are you ready?" "Yes, sir," the officer said. "It feels impossible." Hayes smiled faintly. Impossible is just a word humans love to challenge. When the fleets were ready, they jumped into deep space using the experimental drives. Stars blurred around them. Space folded. In a matter of hours, they reached a point far beyond the outer rim, deep in harvester-controlled territory. Sensors detected almost nothing. The enemy had no presence here. It was silent. Too silent. Hayes stared at the darkness ahead. Perfect. That is how it should be. Task Group 1 activated decoy signals, mimicking the energy patterns of a human fleet entering conventional space. Harvester detection arrays reacted instantly. A small number of enemy units shifted course toward the decoys. "They've taken the bait," the young officer said quietly. "Good," Hayes replied. Now Task Group 2. Human stealth frigates approached defensive satellites protecting the inner harvester cores. Silent weapons fired. Energy beams disabled power nodes. Satellite after satellite went dark, collapsing under precise strikes. The harvester cores detected the disruption and reacted. The massive central core emitted a low, pulsing signal that rippled outward. Smaller harvester units tried to reorganize to defend their defenses. The young officer's hand shook slightly as he monitored the signals. They're faster than before. They're learning from each strike instantly. Hayes nodded. Then we move before they fully adapt. Task Group 3. Prepare for strike on the central core. Across the fleet, the dreadnoughts and carriers in the strike group aligned. All experimental weapons were primed. Energy pulses hummed. The remaining defensive harvester ships were distracted by Task Groups 1 and 2. It was now or never. Hayes turned to the young officer. "You know what we have to do?" "Yes, sir," the officer whispered. "We go straight at their mind." Hayes nodded. "Exactly. No hesitation. Full speed." The fleet surged forward. Darkness stretched ahead. The central harvester core pulsed faintly in the distance. The enormous structure moved subtly, but it was stationary enough to be within striking range. Every crew member knew the stakes. If the central core detected them early, it would adapt and destroy the strike fleet before they could fire. If they delayed, the window would close. Hayes gave the final command. "Engage experimental drives. Approach stealth vector Delta." The fleet shifted. Space around them bent. They moved faster than light should allow, invisible to sensors. The harvester core remained unaware. The young officer leaned forward, voice barely audible. "Sir, this is it." Hayes's face was calm. "Yes. Now, we end this chapter. From deep space, a wave of silent, precise human ships moved closer to the heart of the harvester network. The final strike would begin in moments. The galaxy waited in quiet tension, unaware that the fate of countless systems rested on the edge of a single plan. And deep in the void, the central harvester core pulsed, still unaware of what was coming. The calm before the storm stretched endlessly, thick with anticipation. Humanity had reached the enemy's heart. The outcome would decide the future. The war had entered its most critical phase. The hunt for the harvester cores had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. The human strike fleet moved like shadows across the void. Every ship was silent, every crew member tense. The massive central harvester core pulsed ahead, unaware of the intruders closing in from multiple angles. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the display. "Final strike formation complete," he said quietly. The young officer beside him swallowed hard. "Sir, it's enormous. Bigger than anything we've faced before." Hayes nodded. "Exactly why we cannot hesitate." Deep inside the harvester core, sensors began to flicker. The faintest signal anomaly passed through its network. It paused, analyzing. Its adaptive mind was fast, but the human fleet had approached faster than it could predict. Stealth vector holding, the engineer reported. No detection yet. Hayes took a slow breath. Good. Hold this window. Any sudden move, and we lose it. Outside, the Draxian star glowed faintly behind them. Its blue-white fusion safely returned to a normal state. It had survived humanity's earlier gambit, and now it watched silently, a distant sentinel. The strike group closed to attack range. Task Group 1 and 2 had done their work. The outer defensive satellites were destroyed, and the smaller harvester units were scattered. Only the central core remained, colossal and dark, its surface shifting like a living machine. Hayes turned to the young officer. Target the main energy conduits. We collapsed the internal network in one synchronized strike. The officer's hands shook slightly as he coordinated the commands. Conduits locked. Weapons primed. On the central core, sensors finally registered the incoming threat. Energy rings flickered across its surface. A low hum pulsed through the surrounding void. The harvester core began analyzing. It had never seen this kind of strike. They're inside our perimeter, the human engineer said calmly. They have bypassed all outer defenses. Good, Hayes said softly. Let's finish it. The fleet's experimental drives activated. Beams of compressed stellar energy lined up along the strike ships. The targeting systems synchronized, each vessel firing in perfect sequence. The first beam hit the outer shell of the harvester core. Unlike previous attacks, this one was not meant to pierce or destroy. It was meant to destabilize. The core shuddered as internal circuits overloaded. It pulsed violently, attempting to adapt, but it could not predict the precise timing of the second strike. Seconds later, another beam fired directly at the internal energy conduits. Sparks of dark energy flared, tearing through the adaptive layers inside. The central harvester core pulsed again, but this time it staggered. Its vast network of smaller units sent out emergency signals, attempting to reconnect and stabilize the core. Human ships reacted instantly, firing secondary volleys to intercept the adaptive responses. The central core's surface split along weak points, revealing a glowing internal structure. Hayes leaned forward. This is it. All units, fire the final phase. The fleet unleashed a concentrated wave of combined energy. The beams synchronized into a single ultra-focused strike aimed at the core's central node. The internal networks sparked and collapsed under the pressure. The massive structure groaned, metallic plates shifting and breaking apart. The adaptive pulses it had used to learn from humanity were now its undoing. On the human flagship, silence filled the bridge as the energy wave struck. The central core exploded from the inside out. Fragments of the enormous ship flew outward. Smaller harvester units without guidance began to collide and break apart. The threat that had erased 17 star systems and pushed humanity to the edge of extinction was no more, at least in this sector. Hayes exhaled slowly. Status report, he said. Central core destroyed. Remaining units scattered. No organized command detected. The young officer's eyes were wide. We did it, sir. It's over. Hayes did not smile. It's never truly over, he said. But for now, we have won a decisive battle. Across the galaxy, news of humanity's strike spread. Systems that had been threatened now breathed easier. The Galactic Council convened again. Humanity has proven what was thought impossible, the council leader said. They destroyed the central command of the harvesters with minimal losses. Their strategy, their coordination, it is unmatched. Hayes addressed the council directly. We did not act for glory. We acted for survival. There are still harvester cores out there. We must remain vigilant, and we must prepare to act again should they return. In the council chamber, delegates nodded. For the first time, they saw humanity not just as a member of the galaxy, but as a protector. On the Draxian star, the faint glow of normal fusion returned fully. The system had survived. Human fleets began regrouping, repairing damage, and collecting debris. The scale of destruction they had wrought was immense, but necessary. The young officer turned to Hayes. Sir, what happens next? Hayes looked toward the distant edge of the galaxy, where faint signals indicated other harvester cores. "Next, we hunt," he said simply. "We take the fight to them before they ever threaten another system." Across the void, deep in the remnants of harvester territory, scattered signals blinked weakly. Adaptive units had survived, but without a central command, they were directionless. Yet the faint pulses suggested that one day, new cores might rise. Humanity had struck first. Humanity had struck decisively. And humanity had set a warning across the galaxy. They would not wait. The galaxy had learned a lesson that no species would forget. A single civilization, daring, relentless, and united, had fought back against a force that no other species could challenge, and had survived. As the human fleets returned toward known space, repair and replenishment underway, the crew aboard the flagship watched the stars. "We've done the impossible," the young officer said quietly. Hayes placed a hand on his shoulder. "We've done more than survive," he said. "We've shown the galaxy that humanity refuses to fall." Far beyond the Draction system, faint energy signals from scattered harvester units pulsed. They were weak, directionless, and adaptive, but they would remember. And somewhere deep in the void, new intelligence began to form, slowly recalculating, slowly learning. Humanity had won the battle. But the war for survival in a galaxy full of silent, adaptive killers was only beginning. And for the first time, humanity had proven they would not be forgotten. They would not be destroyed. They would fight, and they would continue to rise. The stars themselves had witnessed it. The galaxy had learned the name of humanity. The galaxy would never forget it.